Lauren had always been the type to see the best in people. She believed in giving the benefit of the doubt, in second chances, in the idea that love, if nurtured, could soften the hardest of hearts. She clung to that belief like a lighthouse in fog, steady, unwavering, even when the waters grew dark. But with Sam, it wasn't just about love. It was about validation, approval, safety, or so she had once believed. They met during sophomore year of college. Lauren was studying late in the library when Sam approached her table with an easy grin and a confident, "Mind if I sit?" He had that kind of presence. Sam, charismatic, well-dressed, quick with a joke that made everyone around him laugh. He had the sort of confidence that made people lean in when he spoke. His navy hoodie was slung carelessly over one shoulder, and his smile carried the polish of someone used to being liked. Lauren, quiet, observant, the girl who spent more time in libraries than at parties, who noticed the subtext of people's expressions more than their words, was drawn to his fire. She spent more time sketching in margins than sipping cocktails at college parties, but when Sam leaned over her books and asked what she was drawing, she felt her stomach flutter. He looked at her like she was interesting. And for Lauren, who often felt invisible, that alone felt like gravity. Their first few months together were golden. At first, he was attentive, sweet. He sent her coffee on long study nights and waited for her outside lecture halls with her favorite candy. He left sticky notes on her dorm door with hand-drawn hearts and jokes only the two of them would understand. She'd wake up to morning texts that made her smile and fall asleep to his voice over the phone. It felt safe. It felt like maybe, just maybe, she could finally exhale. But over time, subtly, the sweetness soured. "Is that what you're wearing?" he'd ask one night before a dinner date. Lauren looked down at her outfit, black pants and her favorite violet blouse. "What's wrong with it?" He shrugged, slipping on his watch. "Nothing, it's just basic." He smiled afterward, but it was that tight-lipped kind of smile, the one that never reached his eyes. "It's a bit plain, don't you think?" She laughed, lightly, unsure whether he meant it or not, and brushed at her sleeve. "I like it." "Sure, as long as you're comfortable." She laughed again, but quieter. It was always like that with Sam, the edge of his words buried beneath a smile, a compliment with a twist, a joke that landed like a bruise. And when she landed a job offer at the nonprofit she'd been dreaming about, a role she'd worked tirelessly for, she called Sam first, breathless with joy. "That's amazing," he said, kissing her forehead. Then, "Hopefully it doesn't go to your head?" Lauren's smile wavered. "Just teasing," he added with a wink. But the celebration died in her chest. She nodded, tucked her excitement away, and changed the subject. It became a pattern. Lauren would smile, nod, swallow her pride like glass, at his passive-aggressive digs and the way he somehow dimmed when she shone. Each achievement muted by his quiet disapproval, each compliment followed by a casual jab, each moment of joy undercut by the need to stay small, agreeable, digestible. Sam never told her outright to be less, but somehow she always felt the pressure to shrink in his presence. And still, she stayed. Because he came back each time, with apologies, with soft hands and softer words, because their friends thought they were perfect together, because her parents adored him, because it was easier to tell herself that maybe she was imagining things, that maybe she was too sensitive. But deep down, Lauren had always known. Not in the conscious way people know the sky is blue or that fire burns. No, it was buried deep in the marrow of her bones, a persistent hum of unease, this gnawing sense that Sam didn't really love her. Not fully, not the way she loved him. Sometimes when he looked at her, there was a flicker of something cold in his eyes. Contempt? Boredom? She never dared say it out loud. Not when everyone around her believed they were in love. Not when she wanted to believe it herself. Until it happened on a summer evening that should have been perfect. The sun cast golden streaks across the lawn, A breeze whispered through the trees, and laughter echoed from the backyard where folding chairs had been scattered between tables of food. Lauren's parents had hosted the barbecue, inviting old friends, neighbors, and, of course, Sam's family. Everyone was relaxed, comfortable, full of grilled ribs and sweet tea. Lauren had just returned from inside the house with a tray of lemonade when the crowd suddenly quieted. She looked up and froze. Sam was down on one knee. Her hands flew to her mouth. There was a collective gasp. Phones came out. Someone whispered, "Oh my God, is this really happening?" Lauren stared at him, blinking in disbelief. Her chest swelled with a rush of conflicting emotion, excitement, nervousness, confusion. Sam looked up at her with his usual grin, holding open the velvet box. "I guess I'm stuck with you now," he said with a chuckle. "I'm officially forced to spend the rest of my life with this one." Lauren's parents, glowing with pride, stood front and center. There was laughter. Her father's green eyes twinkled. Her mother wiped away a tear, and Lauren, heart trembling, chose not to hear the warning in Sam's words. So Lauren did what she always did. She smiled wide and played along. She bent down to hug him. He slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her hand. The diamond glinted under fairy lights strung across the garden, woven through the trees and fences, casting soft halos over the grass. Lauren turned to the crowd, lifting her hand to show off the ring. "See," she said, voice bright, smile bigger than it needed to be. "Someone did want me after all." The crowd cheered. But deep down, beneath her skin, something had begun to curdle. It was like smiling in a dream where you knew something terrible waited outside the edges. Sam pulled her close and whispered in her ear, "Told you I'd make you cry in public one day." She laughed softly, pretending it was funny, pretending it didn't sting. Because this was what she wanted, wasn't it? A ring, a man who loved her, a future that looked good from the outside. But even as she kissed him, even as she posed for pictures beneath the fairy lights, Lauren couldn't shake the feeling that the future she was stepping into wasn't hers at all. It was the one he'd chosen for her. And she wasn't sure how to get out of it without breaking everything. Engagement did not soften Sam. If anything, it hardened him. As the days ticked by, Lauren began to notice how his warmth turned cold in the smallest ways. When she sold her first painting through a gallery showcase, Sam didn't say, "Congratulations." He didn't ask how it felt to see her name printed on the gallery card. He only glanced at the painting and said, "That's nice," before returning to his phone. When she got a glowing email from her boss praising a campaign she had spearheaded, she read it out loud, excitement tingling in her chest. Sam merely raised his eyebrow and muttered his go-to phrase, "Cool, just don't let it go to your head." The words, routine and dismissive, always ready to clip her wings. Lauren stood there, phone still in her hand, a hollow ache blooming quietly beneath her ribs. Sometimes when she spent time putting herself together, applying soft makeup, styling her hair, slipping on her favorite earrings, glowing with the effort of self-love, he would pause at the doorway, eyes briefly scanning her before remarking, "Trying a little hard today, huh?" He always said it with a grin, like he was teasing, but the grin never reached his eyes. In the beginning, she would argue, ask him why he said those things, but his responses were always the same. "I'm just joking. Why are you being so sensitive? You know I love you." And so she stopped asking. The weeks after the proposal were a blur of wedding expos, floral catalogs, and venue tours and tastings. Her mother bought bridal magazines in bulk. Sam's mother started a group chat with Lauren and her sisters, full of links to cakes and color palettes. From the outside, everything looked perfect. But something inside the relationship had shifted. Sam stopped coming over as often. He stopped making plans, or canceled them a few days later. He skipped weekends he promised to spend with her. Work, he said. Or the guys wanted to go out. He no longer reached for her hand when they walked together. He rarely kissed her goodbye, but he never failed to bring her along when it came to family functions. Birthdays, anniversaries, holidays. Dinners at his parents' house, where Lauren was always seated next to him, where Sam played the attentive, engaged fiancé with convincing charm. One night, after yet another formal dinner with his family, Lauren sat beside him in the car, staring out the window. "I just want my parents to see we're doing well," he told her. Of course. But her heart gave a quiet twist. Because she realized something in that moment. She was not his partner. She was less of a fiancé and more of a display, a placeholder to parade in front of his parents, proof that he was doing the right thing, settling down, being responsible. The woman he used to pacify his parents, to fulfill expectations, to check off a box labeled stable relationship. The girl who wore the ring while he drifted somewhere else. And still she held on, out of hope, out of habit, out of the stubborn belief that maybe things would change, until the picnic, until everything snapped. The park was alive with sunshine and music, the kind of afternoon that felt suspended in gold. It was a Saturday, lazily perfect. Children laughing as they chased bubbles near the duck pond, couples sprawled on blankets, guitars strumming in the distance. Lauren sat cross-legged on the grass beside her best friend Daisy, sun warm on her skin, sipping lemonade from a mason jar and squinting up at the sky. Daisy nudged her with a grin. "Tell me again why you agreed to let your mom buy 8 different cake samples?" Lauren laughed, shaking her head. "Because she guilted me with that whole 'you only get married once' speech." Daisy snorted. "You're a better daughter than me." They were in the middle of reminiscing about a disastrous college art show when Lauren's laugh faltered mid-breath. Her gaze had caught on a shape across the lawn. Tall, familiar, relaxed. Sam! Her breath caught. He was lounging on a checkered blanket with a few of his college friends, their loud voices floating faintly on the wind. Lauren's pulse stuttered. But it wasn't the guys that made her freeze. It was the woman perched on Sam's lap. Stunning, effortlessly magnetic. She wore a fitted floral dress that hugged her figure in all the right ways, her long legs crossed as she leaned into him, laughing at something he just said. Jet black waves of hair framed her flawless face, and when she tilted her head back to laugh, even the light seemed to cling to her, like she belonged in it. A woman so beautiful it almost hurt to look at her. Sam's hand rested easily on her hip. His fingers traced lazy circles. Lauren's world narrowed. She couldn't hear Daisy anymore, couldn't feel the sun on her arms. She could only feel the pressure building in her chest, sharp and hot and sickening. "I need to go," she said abruptly, rising to her feet. "Lauren, what?" Daisy turned to follow her gaze. Then she went still. Her face darkened, her jaw clenched. That bastard. They packed fast, neither speaking. Daisy shoved fruit containers and napkins into the tote bag, while Lauren folded up the blanket with trembling hands. They walked to the car in silence. Lauren moved mechanically, like someone wading through a nightmare. Once inside, Daisy turned the ignition, her hands gripping the wheel too tight. Lauren said nothing. "Say something," Daisy whispered, glancing over. Lauren didn't look away from the window. Her eyes were dry, too stunned for tears. Her voice was quiet, flat. "Not yet." Daisy didn't press her. The drive home was wrapped in silence. But Lauren's mind was anything but still. Every moment replayed behind her eyes in high definition. The curve of the woman's smirk, the way Sam had looked at her, like she was the most interesting thing in the world. A look that he hadn't given Lauren in months. Something had cracked open inside her, and for the first time in a long time, Lauren wasn't shrinking to fit around someone else's needs. She was starting to plan. Not revenge, not yet, but something colder, something final. The next few days passed in a haze of artificial normalcy. Lauren went to work, answered texts, smiled when people complimented her engagement photos. But beneath her calm, she was unraveling and reweaving herself, thread by thread, into something sharper. She said nothing to Sam. Not yet. When he showed up at her apartment 2 evenings later, he carried a bottle of wine and wore that easy smile she used to find charming. He kissed her forehead like he always did, talked about how stressful work had been, how exhausting the week felt. He didn't mention the picnic, didn't offer an explanation. Lauren let him in. She poured them each a glass of wine, nodding when he asked if she wanted to order takeout. She sat across from him on the couch, watching him scroll through his phone like nothing had happened. But her mind never stopped moving. She observed him the way a sculptor observes stone, marking the cracks, measuring the weight of what needed to be chipped away. When he finally left that night, Lauren locked the door behind him and didn't move for several minutes. The room was silent, except for the gentle ticking of the wall clock. She picked up her phone. "Do you still know how to hack?" Daisy's voice crackled through the line almost instantly. "That's how you want to open this conversation?" "I'm serious," Lauren said. There was a pause. Then she asked, more cautious now, "Why?" She exhaled slowly, her voice quiet, deliberate. It's time someone gave him a taste of consequence. That was all she had to say. By the next morning, they were already working. Lauren sat at her computer and dug through an old external hard drive. She remembered Sam showing her those pictures one night in college, laughing as he flipped through a folder on his laptop labeled Wild Nights. It had been late, and he'd been drunk on ego. A warehouse, a rusted historical landmark, photos of broken windows, spray-painted walls, and him posing in front of a graffitied sign with a stupid, smug grin. Got away with it, he'd bragged. Cops never even showed. No one pressed charges. Lauren had smiled at the time, thought it was reckless but harmless. Now she knew better. She pulled every incriminating file into a folder and encrypted it, sending the link to Daisy through a secure email. "These are what you'll use," she typed. Daisy responded within minutes. On it, "Want me to draft captions, hashtags, coordinates?" "All of it," Lauren replied. "Make it public. When I say go, post them everywhere. His social media, his workplace tags, everything." Daisy hesitated, only for a moment. "You sure?" Lauren stared at the screen, her reflection faint in the monitor's glare. Her expression was unreadable, her heart oddly still. "I'll text you when." It was late afternoon when they sat across from each other at Lauren's kitchen table. The sunlight angled through the blinds in warm slats, casting a golden glow over the spread of wedding planners, fabric swatches, and notepads that cluttered the table between them. A flickering candle burned quietly on the counter behind them, scenting the air with lavender. Lauren scrolled absently through her phone, not really looking at anything, while Sam tapped a pen against his palm, scanning a tentative calendar. "Next year," Lauren said at last, without lifting her gaze. Sam frowned. "Why not closer?" He twirled the pen between his fingers, the cap clicking against his ring finger with each slow spin. Lauren glanced up with a half smile. "You want me to be your wife that bad?" she teased, her tone light, careful. Sam exhaled sharply through his nose. Not quite a laugh. He leaned back in his chair and ran a hand through his hair. "My parents are breathing down my neck about marriage and kids," he muttered. I need this over with." The words hit her like a slap. Lauren froze, the edge of her phone still warm in her palm. She blinked, unsure if she'd heard him correctly. He didn't notice. Or maybe he didn't care. Then, as if sensing he'd gone too far, Sam pushed his chair back slightly and stood. He circled behind her, laying his hands on her shoulders, his thumbs pressing gentle circles into her tense muscles. "I'm kidding," he said softly. "Come on, you know I'm just messing with you. Of course I'm excited to marry you." He bent down, his breath brushing her ear. "I can't believe I get to have you all to myself." He gently tilted her chin upward, guiding her to meet his gaze. His blue eyes sparkled under the low light, his smile practiced, polished. Lauren mirrored the smile. The corners of her mouth lifted. She even let herself lean into his touch. But her heart had already checked out. Inside, her heart was quiet. Not broken, not sad, just silent. Like it had finally gone still after too long fighting against a tide. She knew then, more clearly than she'd ever known anything before, that she wasn't the girl dreaming of her wedding anymore. She was watching it unfold like a stranger, an observer in someone else's love story. He kissed her forehead and returned to his chair, already flipping to the next month in the planner. Lauren slowly turned her gaze back to her screen. Her phone lit up with Daisy's most recent message. "Ready when you are." She locked the screen and tucked it under a folder. Not yet, but soon. It was nearly 7 when Lauren's phone buzzed from where it rested beside her teacup. She was home alone, curled into the corner of her couch, soft music playing in the background, and a book open in her lap. The message on her screen was brief. "You coming? We're waiting." It was from Sam's sister. Lauren blinked, rereading it. "Coming where?" she typed back. The reply was instant. "The family dinner. Sam said you knew. Brought his friend from work." Her chest tightened. Her fingers slowly curled around the phone, and for a long moment, she didn't move. The silence of her apartment seemed to grow louder, the faint hum of the fridge buzzing like static in her ears. He hadn't told her. Of course he hadn't. Her stomach dropped, not just from the betrayal, but from the insult of how casual it all seemed, how effortlessly he erased her from the equation. She rose from the couch, calm and measured, and walked to her bedroom. She dialed Daisy. "It's tonight," she said simply. There was no need to explain. Within 30 minutes, Lauren was standing in front of her mirror, smoothing the lines of a simple but elegant navy dress. It wasn't flashy. It didn't need to be. Her makeup was clean, minimal. Her hair swept back. Her presence would be louder than anything she wore. The restaurant was bustling when she arrived. Candles flickered at every table, silverware clinked gently, and laughter floated up toward the vaulted ceiling. She spotted them immediately. Sam's family seated around a long table near the center. Mid-conversation, the soft lull of familiarity holding them together. And there was Sam. He sat comfortably at the head of the table, laughing at something his father had said. But it was the woman beside him that stole the moment. Nyla. Jet black hair cascaded in waves over her shoulders, framing her sculpted cheekbones. Her eyes, an electric, unsettling blue, radiant as if lit from within, glinted under the low lights. Her full, glossed lips curved in a knowing smirk as she whispered something into Sam's ear. Lauren took a breath. Sam looked up and spotted her. His smile faltered. Then just as quickly, it returned. Too big, too rehearsed. "Told you she'd get here," he said loudly, gesturing vaguely. "You know she's slow." Nyla giggled, brushing her fingers along the length of Sam's sleeve, as if marking territory. Lauren's gaze remained steady. She answered with silence. Sam glanced at the full table and gestured vaguely toward a small, 2-person table off to the side. "Can you sit over there?" For a beat, no one said a word. His family stared at their plates, embarrassment settling thick in the air. His mother shifted uncomfortably. His father cleared his throat. Lauren said nothing. She simply nodded and walked. Each step was deliberate as she passed the family, chin high, posture perfect. She slid into the corner table, the one meant for someone who didn't belong, and unfolded the napkin with grace. The waiter approached. "Vodka tonic and whatever's most expensive on the menu." She smiled, then picked up her phone. "Send it." Across the room, Sam threw his head back and laughed at something Neela said. He had no idea that the floor beneath his perfect little world had just begun to crack. It began with a flicker. Red and blue lights danced silently across the windows of the restaurant. Subtle at first, just enough to catch the eye, like a pulse beneath glass. There were no sirens, no warning, just presence. Lauren caught the reflection before anyone else. She paused with her fork halfway to her mouth, gaze sliding to the street outside. She chewed thoughtfully, swallowed. Across the room, Sam laughed, his arm draped lazily behind Neela as if she were some prize he'd won. His smile sparkled with smug satisfaction. Nyla leaned in closer, whispering something into his ear, her manicured fingers grazing his collar. His smile widened. Sam's mother, seated further down the table, shifted in her seat.
Her eyes had caught on the window too. The colors danced across her face. She looked queasy. Lauren took another bite of her seared scallops, savoring the delicate flavor. She sipped her drink, the ice clinking gently against the glass. Then the restaurant doors opened. 2 officers stepped inside, quiet but unmistakable in their authority. The air shifted around them as conversations faltered and a hush rolled slowly through the room like fog. One officer stayed near the entrance, scanning the tables. The other began walking purposefully down the aisle. The closer he got, the more the tension sharpened. Silverware stilled, heads turned.
He stopped at the long family table. "Samuel Reed?" he asked. Sam looked up, confused, his smile twitching. "Yeah?" The officer's voice was clear. "We received a tip. You'll need to come with us." "What? Wait, this has to be a mistake," Sam said, laughing nervously. He looked around, expecting someone to explain. His family was frozen in place. Nyla blinked rapidly, her mouth slightly agape. She leaned away from him like he'd suddenly caught fire. "Stand up, sir," the officer said firmly. "Please place your hands behind your back." "Hold on, I don't understand. What the hell is this about?" But the officers didn't explain. They didn't need to. One of them pulled out a printed folder. A still frame of Sam tagging the historic warehouse wall sat paperclipped to the front. As they began to read him his rights, Nyla backed away, eyes wide with disbelief. "You didn't tell me about any of this," she whispered. Sam's face drained of color. "Wait, this is old. This was years ago. It was just a stupid night." "You have the right to remain silent," the officer continued. His wrists were cuffed with swift, practiced efficiency. The sound of metal on metal echoed louder than it should have. Sam's family sat in stunned silence. His mother's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass. His father stared at the napkin in front of him, his jaw tight. Lauren didn't flinch. She lifted her glass again, finishing the last sip with perfect calm. When the officers began walking Sam toward the front of the restaurant, he twisted around, searching. And then he saw her, Lauren. Alone, poised, composed. Her expression was unreadable. No fury, no smugness, just peace. And that gutted him more than anything. Because in that moment, he realized she'd won. Not with rage, not with drama, but with silence, with dignity, with precision. Lauren set her glass down, pulled her coat around her shoulders, and rose from the table. She didn't rush, she didn't look back. Outside, the lights still flickered, and the world moved on without him. The fallout was fast. Within 24 hours, the story was everywhere. The photos Daisy had uploaded, time-stamped, geotagged, and damning spread like wildfire. Screenshots of Sam spray painting the historical landmark, images of broken glass, vandalized interiors, and grinning poses in front of destruction. Lauren hadn't needed to write a caption. The internet filled in the blanks. His employer issued a statement by noon the next day. Samuel Reed has been placed on indefinite leave pending investigation. By the following evening, local news outlets had picked up the story. The headlines were brutal. Promising young executive implicated in vandalism scandal. Photos resurface of corporate consultant damaging protected landmark. His social feeds were flooded. Comments, questions, rage, and ridicule all jumbled together. Friends unfollowed. Coworkers distanced themselves. Extended family reached out, only to go silent again once the details came out. The dumb, reckless crime he'd once boasted about, the thing he thought he'd gotten away with, was now center stage. Nyla vanished, deleted her socials, blocked Sam. Word got around she quit her job the next morning and left town without saying goodbye. Sam's parents tried to reach Lauren. Calls, messages, even a letter slipped under her door, handwritten by her mother, pleading for clarity, for understanding, for grace. Lauren didn't respond. She blocked every number. Instead, she moved. A new apartment, sunlit and airy, with tall windows and walls the color of eggshells. She filled it with plants, herbs in the kitchen, ferns by the balcony, a monstera in the corner that caught the light just right. She painted again, not for distraction, but for herself. Soft blues, sharp reds, fluid lines, and splintered angles. Her pieces found buyers online, people who responded to the emotion in the brushstrokes. She signed each canvas with her full name, no longer hiding, no longer shrinking. One evening, Daisy dropped by with Thai takeout and 2 bottles of wine. They sat on the rug beneath the windows, shoes kicked off, a candle flickering beside them.
"You okay?" Daisy asked, handing her a glass. Lauren took a slow sip. "Better than ever." Daisy looked around at the tidy space. "I still can't believe you pulled that off." Lauren gave a small smile. "He used me to keep his parents happy. He humiliated me in front of them to impress someone else. He treated me like an accessory." She glanced out the window. The city lights blinked calmly in the distance. "I was his quiet little secret, but now—" She paused, her voice cool. "He's everyone's headline." Daisy raised her glass. "To consequences." Lauren clinked it gently. "To freedom." Later that night, after Daisy left, Lauren lit a candle and curled up beside the window. She watched the stars emerge one by one. Sometimes, she thought, the best revenge isn't fire. It's walking away and never looking back.